Chapter 3. One of the major intellectual challenges I encountered in my early years of exploration was grappling with the origin of life, particularly the formation of the first living cell. According to current scientific theories, life began when organic molecules, under the right environmental conditions, spontaneously organized into complex structures. The cell, considered the fundamental building block of life, is believed to have originated when self-replicating RNA molecules became enclosed within a membrane composed of phospholipids. These phospholipids, when placed in water, naturally form bilayers due to their chemical structure. Hydrophilic, water-attracting. Heads face outward while hydrophobic, water-repelling, tails point inward. This arrangement creates a stable barrier, capable of separating the internal environment from the external, one of the most critical features of any living organism. These self-assembling membrane-bound bubbles, sometimes called protocells, are thought to have formed in places such as hydrothermal vents or shallow pools, providing a kind of primitive shelter where early biochemical reactions could occur. Inside these protocells, self-replicating RNA molecules may have driven the early steps of evolution, laying the groundwork for the development of more complex life. However, while this explanation is elegant in its simplicity, it quickly becomes problematic when examined more closely. For instance, RNA replication, crucial for the perpetuation of genetic information, requires the assistance of protein-based molecules known as enzymes. But enzymes themselves are synthesized only through processes directed by RNA and carried out by cellular structures like ribosomes. Ribosomes, in turn, are composed of both ribosomal RNA and proteins, and they require extremely specific sequences and configurations to function correctly. This interdependence raises an unavoidable question. How could RNA replicate without proteins, and how could proteins exist without RNA? It's a loop without a clear starting point, what many describe as the chicken and egg problem of molecular biology. The challenges don't stop there. For a cell to be considered truly alive, it must not only contain genetic information and the ability to replicate, it also needs a way to generate and use energy. This is where the concept of metabolism comes in. All living cells rely on adenosine triphosphate, ADP, as a universal energy currency. ADP powers everything from the synthesis of cell components to muscle contractions and even nerve signaling. According to widely accepted theories, ADP production evolved in three major stages: glycolysis, photosynthesis, and oxidative phosphorylation. But glycolysis, the earliest and simplest form of energy generation, presents its own paradox. To initiate glycolysis, a molecule of glucose must be phosphorylated, meaning a phosphate group must be added to it. This phosphorylation requires an input of two ADP molecules. In other words, ADP is needed to kickstart a process that makes ADP. This is yet another circular dependency that seems to defy the logic of random, step-by-step evolution. Where did the initial ADP come from to start the process? Furthermore, ADP production and usage require the involvement of enzymes, which are highly specific protein molecules. These proteins are formed from chains of amino acids linked together in a precise order, a process directed by genetic codes stored in DNA. But once again, we face a conundrum. The enzymes needed for metabolism are themselves the products of a system that relies on metabolism to exist. The DNA that encodes them must already be in place, and the machinery to read and translate that DNA, like RNA polymerase and ribosomes, must also be present and fully functional. These systems don't just need to exist, they need to work together harmoniously and simultaneously. It's not something that can easily be explained through slow, gradual evolutionary changes, because without the entire system in place, none of it works. All of these intricately interconnected components, RNA, DNA, enzymes, ribosomes, metabolic pathways, are so dependent on one another that imagining their independent or sequential emergence becomes a matter of speculation filled with unresolved questions. The more I researched and reflected on this, the more it seemed that science, while powerful in describing what happens within life as we know it, often falls short of explaining how life truly began. This realization expanded my inquiry beyond biology into the realm of physics and cosmology. I began to ask broader questions. Why do the laws of physics even exist? Why are constants like gravity, force, pressure, and energy not only present but remarkably stable across space and time? Why does the universe operate with such precise mathematical order that we can describe it using equations? These aren't just curious features of the universe, they're profound mysteries. By my early 20s, I came to see that science, though incredibly useful in helping us understand the mechanisms of the natural world, ultimately left me with more circular questions than concrete answers. Each answer seemed to depend on another system that had to already be in place. The supposed simplicity of the scientific model of origins turned out to be extraordinarily complex and interdependent. This growing awareness led me to a personal and intellectual crossroads. Could such layered precision, balance, and purpose exist without intention? After much reflection, I reached the conclusion that there must be a creator, an all-powerful, intelligent force behind the orchestration of life and the universe itself. The more I studied, the more I recognized a level of design that seemed too exact to be accidental. Where science left gaps, faith provided a coherent and meaningful explanation, that a divine mind created all things with wisdom and purpose. Chapter 4. In my search for spiritual truth, I chose to focus my attention on Christianity because, unlike many other religions, it appeared to be deeply rooted in historical reality. Many of the events it describes took place in real geographical locations and involved people and cultures that are well documented outside of Scripture. This gave Christianity a certain credibility. It wasn't just a system of spiritual beliefs, but a faith grounded in verifiable history. Christianity, as we know it, was formally established through the teachings and life of Jesus Christ as recorded in the New Testament. However, it claims to be more than just a new religious movement. It presents itself as the fulfillment of the much older Jewish scriptures, known to Christians as the Old Testament. Because of this foundational claim, I felt it was necessary to investigate whether the Old Testament itself could be trusted. Was it historically reliable? Was there reason to believe what it said, especially regarding human origins? The Old Testament opens with the story of creation in the book of Genesis. It tells us that humanity began with two individuals, Adam and Eve, who were directly created by God. Genesis 1 verse 27 states, "So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God he created them. Male and female he created them." The narrative further explains that human beings were formed from the earth itself, with Genesis 3 verse 19 affirming, "By the sweat of your brow you will eat your food until you return to the ground, since from it you were taken. For dust you are, and to dust you will return." According to Scripture, Adam and Eve were not only created by God from organic matter, but were also meant to be his image-bearers on earth, the representatives of his divine nature. They were also designated as the common ancestors of all humanity. This prompted me to compare the biblical account with what modern science says about human ancestry. Surprisingly, I discovered that science, while differing from the Bible in many ways, especially in terms of timelines and mechanisms, does not completely contradict the idea that all humans trace back to two individuals. In the field of genetics, researchers have identified what they call mitochondrial Eve and Y-chromosomal Adam. These are not necessarily the first humans, nor were they the only humans alive at their time. Rather, they represent the most recent common ancestors, MRCAs, from whom all living humans today have inherited specific genetic material. Mitochondrial Eve refers to a woman from whom all living humans inherited their mitochondrial DNA, genetic material passed exclusively through the maternal line. This DNA is highly stable over generations, allowing scientists to create a phylogenetic tree tracing maternal ancestry back to this one woman. Similarly, Y-chromosomal Adam is the man from whom all living men have inherited their Y chromosome, passed down through the paternal line. Like mitochondrial Eve, this man was not the only male alive at his time, but he is the only one whose paternal line has continued unbroken to the present. It's important to understand that modern science believes neither of these individuals lived at the exact same time nor necessarily knew each other. They represent different aspects of our ancestry. Yet their existence affirms an interesting overlap with the biblical concept. All people alive today share a common maternal and paternal ancestor. This convergence of science and scripture intrigued me. While the two fields offer very different narratives, science speaks of evolution over millions of years, while the Bible speaks of divine creation within a structured time frame. They surprisingly agree on one profound point. All of humanity is biologically connected, descending from a common pair of ancestors. The mechanisms may differ, but the conclusion echoes across both disciplines. Also, it is important to understand science has to give millions of years for a single-cell organism to develop into all the life we see on Earth today. However, an all-powerful God does not need any amount of time. Furthermore, this shared conclusion opened the door for deeper reflection. If even one of the oldest religious texts on record aligns with modern genetics on this fundamental point, could it be that other spiritual insights from the Bible are also grounded in truth? For instance, the next big historical event to take place in the Bible is the flood.